for those who believe in the nuances and the activities of the strategist in power, they call him Mr. Strategy. And if praising surreptition, if praising larceny is the way to go, our children will ask us questions. Because, if in 2014, 2015, we asked for an electoral process that Nigerians and indeed the world will salute, if then we thought that the electoral process can be electronically managed, why is this same party not interested in electronic transmission of results or electronic voting? It simply tells you that we have people who are not interested in doing right. And if at the level of the House of Representatives, they passed a law way back in December, allowing and saying in no uncertain terms that there could be premium time and real-time transmission of election results. What happened between then and now? And if in 2014, 2015, we had less than, the coverage of our telephony was far less than what it is today, then you ask yourself, is it when the technological processes has improved, when we have more network coverages across the country, that we cannot transmit election results electronically? What has changed? And then you ask yourself, again, a very important question, why did the lawmakers reduce the time for release of funds? Then you understand where Amopita is coming from. You also ask yourself, why reduce the period of campaigns? Then you ask yourself, another bobby trap in the new law, so that you understand why Amopita is complaining. It's telling you ahead of time, I may fail, and don't blame me if I fail. That's how bad it is. In that law is a request for parties to submit their election register, their membership register to INEC, which means that the ruling party through the National Assembly is trying to restrict the space. You ask yourself, how many parties will be able to compute and finish the processes of updating their voter registers before the deadline? And then you ask yourself, okay, what if I decide to run tomorrow and the party that I belong to doesn't want to field me and I want to go to another party, like what happened in 2023 when Peter Obi left the PDP and went to the Labour Party. In the present instance, it's going to be almost impossible. Now, what are they trying to do? Disenfranchise the people from the beginning and make sure that they get to power by any means possible. And you have an INEC umpire who is faced with this reality. What is he going to do? You're giving him an alibi for failure. He's saying, manage your expectations because the Electoral Act is going to make it almost impossible for me to please you. Invariably, he's also saying that the Electoral Act has made it possible for me to please the ruling party. And so the challenge before us, Victor, as I talk to you, is the fact that, and I say this without fear of querulous critics, that if you follow the letter, that's the new law, you follow the nuances of the ruling party, you follow the proclamations from both chambers of the National Assembly, from the dishonorable members, and from the senators who are largely without distinction, who are not distinguished in any way. If you follow the dramaturgy on the political space, you know that 2027 is rigged. And I think that what we must begin to do as a people is to challenge every process by the day. And because eternal vigilance, they say, is the price for freedom and liberty.
What do you make of the Speaker's position that they decided to go for the hybrid provision in the Electoral Act, as electronic transmission and manual, because first and foremost, they don't have Nigeria's internet penetration is very poor, and then secondly, they don't want to disenfranchise anyone, and thirdly, they want to guard against apathy. That these are the reasons why they went for the hybrid.
All lies. Again, all lies. Let me tell you, the right way to go was to have called for expert opinion from INEC. Mahmoud did not deny that he had access. Victor, we had access. Don't forget that in this same country, there was a premium time transmission of federal legislative elections the same day that they jammed the IRF. Don't forget that senators, House of Reps elections, the same day as the presidential election, were transmitted premium time. Don't forget, let's stop allowing these men and their falsehood. All lies, Victor. They lie. Barefacedly, shamelessly, soullessly. INEC has said, and they did say under Mahmoud Yakub, that they had the facilities. Because the beavers, we have heard Mike Guinea, a former INEC commissioner, he said clearly that this story about lack of network is not tenable, that the INEC server and the beavers are correlated. A former INEC commissioner, Festus Okoye, has confirmed that in no uncertain terms. So you ask yourself, where did they get these words? Where did they get these whole stories about lack of network? It's all about 2027 and the rigging processes, larceny, electoral subterfuge and deceit. It's all about that. There was no need for the hybrid, Victor. All they needed to do, I saw something lately on the social media. Somebody said, if you can collect my taxes electronically, why can't you transmit my votes electronically? These men think, and posterity will hold them harshly, will judge them harshly. If there is anything they must do, they should see how quickly they can right that wrong. Because nobody believes their perfidy, nobody believes their deceit. That position of the speaker is all a dance of shame, because there is no tenable result, no tenable facts to substantiate that deceit. That hybrid is simply, Victor, let me tell you what they're saying. We're not ready to transmit election results premium time because we know that the people are opposed to what we're doing in power. We know that we are very likely to lose. And so we don't need people to see how badly we fail. What we must do is ensure that we have a stopgap mechanism where we can go do what Nwike did in Rivers, doctor and mutilate election results, do what they have done in Abuja, doctor and mutilate election results, and at the end of the day, when that is done, we can declare ourselves winners. Because don't forget that in this same country, there was premium time transmission of election results in the state of Osun. That was why it was difficult for the Minister of Blue Economy, or whatever it's called, to return as governor. Adeleke defeated him because they couldn't manipulate the process. And you ask yourself, how did they do the transmission of results? Where did they get network? From Mars, from Jupiter, or from Saturn? And when you understand that this whole shenanigans and this whole story is about how they can return to power through electoral larceny, through rigging of election results in 2027, you will discountenance their falsehood. They are all liars.
From the democratic point of view, having seen the INEC timetable, what was your immediate reaction? And do you think the timetable is strengthening or weakening democracy?
When the whole process is faulty, my late father taught me something. He said to me, almost always interrogate the entire process. Don't do a piecemeal appraisal of certain. If you look at the whole process, the Electoral Act, the body language of those who signed, albeit quickly, the law, they act into law. You look at the statements from INEC chairman, you look at the provisions, and then you look at the timetable. what you see is a program to diminish, demean, derode, and derobe our democratic processes of consistency, credibility, and integrity. What you see is a political class that has calculated its outcome before the process. What you see is route to the answer. What you see is a democracy that is in trouble. What you see, like your question connotes, is the fact that our democracy is in trouble. Instead of attempting to return life to our democracy, they're taking the oxygen off a democracy in the intensive care unit. And so clearly, they want our democracy dead. And so I want to say without equivocation that the greatest threat to our democracy is the ruling party. The greatest threat to our democracy is the National Assembly, headed by Citizen Akpabio. The greatest threat to our democracy is the APC that sees nothing wrong in dismembering credible opposition. The greatest threat to our democracy are those who think that they must stand on a mandate that is largely questionable. They must stand on a mandate that does not care whether Nigerians are safe, that does not care about the mandate. They do not care about a mandate that is unmindful of the reality and the urgency of now. And that's how sad it is. Everything they're doing is deliberately calculated at undermining the credibility and integrity of the 2027 election. And that's why I repeat, I pity Amopiton. And whether he's okay with it, whether he wants posterity to judge him harshly, that's his choice. But I think that this is the time for statesmen to rise up. Statesmen care about the next generation, not necessarily about the next election. And I think that what we must be concerned about is how our children perceive what happens on the political stage, how posterity judges the moment and what has happened and what is going to happen in 2027. And if we truly care, the media, the civil society, and the opposition must unite in asking that our political office holders express some scruples, that our political office holders rise to the urgency of now, that our political office holders save our democracy from the guillotine and ensure that things work rightly. Because if they do not, whatever becomes of the morrow, a highly progressive world will judge them harshly.
Looking at the structure and the timing of the timetable, from your perspective, do you see anything that fundamentally tilts the playing field in favor of the ruling party? And how does the timeline for party primaries affect opposition parties differently from the ruling party?
In so many ways, from the Electoral Act, like I said, to the timetable, as it were, the demand, first thing you must note, is a demand for the submission of a party membership register. And that's why IPAC is raising concerns and asking that there must be an overhaul of the timetable due to how it affects submission, electronic submission of register of the parties. The ruling party is interested in ensuring that people who are strong candidates are not able to move from one party to the other and get the ticket to run against the ruling party. And that's one of the ways that they have emerged at narrowing down the space. Then the timeline for the space for campaigns, reducing the number of days of campaign obviously works against the opposition parties and favors the ruling party that's already campaigning. And then largely, if you look at the period for submission of, like I said, funding, INEC can claim that, oh, we don't have enough materials, the time was short, this, that, and then we cannot. But don't forget that the ruling party is already on ground. They're far gone with their registration processes. They're far gone with their congresses. And the opposition parties and the smaller parties haven't started. And so the whole process is, like I said, rule to the answer. They had this whole thing planned out. And INEC, unfortunately, I don't want to accuse Amopiton, may have been an unwilling partner in this whole gamut of pre-planned election larceny. But clearly, everything has been staged for the ruling party. And perhaps that is why, for survival, almost all the governors are decamping to the APC. Perhaps that is why, for survival, albeit selfishly, almost all the lawmakers are decamping to the ruling party. Perhaps that is why Nigeria is increasingly becoming a one-party state, because from the body language of the electoral umpire to the letters of the new Electoral Act, everything appears tailored to favor the ruling party. That's the tragedy of it all. And like I said, Victor, if nothing is done early enough, the 2027 election lacks credibility and stands rigged. And I'm saying that with all commitment, with all verve, nerve, and tissue and sinews in my body, with my soul fixed on truth. I'm saying that if nothing is done early enough, and if nothing gives, the APC will largely return to power across our country, and we'll have a one-party state, because the entire process has been stage managed to favor them.
What do you make of the argument that the opposition itself has also not done well in terms of challenging the APC, providing alternatives for Nigerians, and of course, also mapping out their own strategy in the light of what we've seen? We can take, for example, even the Electoral Act mobilization. Everybody seemed to have just, the opposition seemed to have relaxed, assuming that maybe the ordinary Nigerians should just go out there and just make the noise while they ensconce in their offices and houses and probably watch on telly while the National Assembly is...
Let me surprise you, Victor. Let me surprise you, Victor. Nothing is further from the truth than that line of thought. Victor, we have never seen in recent history the kind of mobilization ditto the electoral law. We've never seen it. Even under Buhari, that we thought was a sadist and a stubborn man, we didn't mobilize like we did lately. People were sleeping at the National Assembly. People were pushing. The civil society came together, pushed certain provisions. We even had a draft sent to the National Assembly. The opposition wasn't lame about the whole process. The whole process was manipulated by Akpabio and his men. You saw the voting process. You saw it on live TV. I have refused to allow the deceit and the treachery and the debauchery of political office holders hold sway. We will debunk their falsehood. Victor, Nigerians mobilized. The opposition mobilized. As much as getting the House of Representatives to pass the law the way we wanted it. It was Akpabio and his Senate that bungled the hopes and the aspirations of the Nigerian people. That should be well stated. It was roguery by a rogue Senate, headed by a rogue Senate president. That was what happened.
That's a hard one. That's a hard one.
No, but that's the truth.
That's a hard one.
That's the truth. They came and doctored and messed up everything. So it's not about the opposition. Now, what do you want the opposition to do? They protested, they went to the National Assembly, and what happened? They were shot at. Don't forget, the optics are there. They were shot at. As much as the Speaker of the House of Representatives coming out to apologize, they were shot at. The optics are there. So it is not so much about, we have never seen in our historicity, particularly this our democracies in 1999, the graphic and barefaced disruption of protests. Now we have a new industry. When you have the opposition marshalling out its point and protesting, this government pays counter-protesters. It's the new business in town. That's how bad it has become. We have protest for and protest against. Now, the new business in town is falsehood, debauchery, and deceit. The new trade in town is that they want to gaslight the people. I heard people say, blame the opposition. How do you blame the opposition when the EFCC, the ICPC, and the state DSS are wound to being teleguided against the opposition? How do you blame the opposition? How many cases does my brother and friend Shore have in courts today? How do you blame the opposition when increasingly you see a presidency and a ruling party that is targeting vibrant voices? Some people have asked me, Chris, why haven't they come for you? And I said, if they come against truth, I will shout even louder. I'm not a coward. You prove to me, if you summon me, prove to me and tell me where I have lied or defamed anybody. And then when you do that, you take me to court. But cowardice is not in my makeup. I tell people proudly from when I was 15 that the day I was born, fear died. I will not be cowed. I will not stop saying the truth. But what is important here is that we must know and cut the opposition some slacks. This government is consistently weaponizing state agencies against the opposition. This government is consistently narrowing down the space of protestation. This government is consistently stifling the right to dissent. And this government is consistently mortifying, if you like, and killing democracy.
All right, as the convener of Country First movement, what concrete actions is your movement planning in response vis-a-vis town hall meetings, legal action, mass sensitization?
That's what we're doing. For me, it's about our country. And let me also, for the purposes of our listeners, say here that understanding that the birth of a nation that we truly want will not only come through mass sensitization, will not only come through protests and protestations, but through a studied approach of educating our people, but through active leadership engagement, through deepening the fabrics and frontiers of our democracy. We have a registered party, Democratic Leadership Alliance, which arguably is about the only ideologically oriented. Go check it out on our website, www.dlanigeria.org, and see. It's an ideological party. We're not necessarily concerned about the immediate election. We're thinking about deepening the frontiers of leadership, teaching our young people to aspire, because it's a shame that the worst of us is ruling over the best of us. And so we're concerned about leadership recruitment and working along with members of the Country First movement across the country. We're engaging our people and saying to them, it is not just about blaming. We must be active in the recruitment processes. We must be active in engaging leaders. And interestingly, Victor, I want to say here, and this is for posterity and indeed our listeners, that it is true that sometimes a people are as good as those who govern them. And mark my choice of words, sometimes. And that sometimes is when we allow sycophants, court jesters, determine the extent of our participation in leadership. When we give up, when we watch those who do not care about our country run roughshod not only on our political space, but mess up our minds such that we begin to doubt our abilities to transform our country. So what we're doing is educating our people and asking them to be critical stakeholders in the process of governance. What we're doing is to inform and educate our people and tell them, almost in the words of Mitt Romney, that leadership must show the way. And, unfortunately, what this government and those who speak for this government are doing is to tell the people, and that was what Lai Mohammed did when they came in, that change begins with them. But truly, all over the world, leadership is a pyramid, and leaders must show the way. Unfortunately, we're living in a country where the narrative is being skewed against the people, and you hear people say, okay, what are the people doing? For what reason did you ask to be made a leader? Is it not to show the way? And so the time has come, and that's what we're doing, to return the blame and put them rightly, and to ask people to look our leaders in the eyes and say to them, you have failed, and the time to pack your baggages and leave our government houses is now. I believe that structurally, it's not about agonizing. We are organizing along with interested individuals to build a nation that works for all of us. And I know it's not an easy task, but Victor, God on the side of the Nigerian people and the masses of our nation, we shall truly and indeed bet a republic that works for all of us.
Lastly, if nothing changes and the timetable stands the way it is, what is your honest prediction for 2027 elections and the future of the opposition in Nigeria?
If nothing changes, if we're unable to, permit my choice of word, force INEC and the National Assembly to do right, or to revisit quickly the law that empowers the ruling party to rig, the law that empowers INEC to fail, then our democracy is in trouble. Then the opposition will be forced to the trenches. Then my worries and fears for our country becomes even more deepened and stronger. And then those who worry that democracy might die in Africa's largest nation become clairvoyants. And so I truly care about our country, and I hope that the prophets of doom do not dance in the village square as those who were indeed realistic and those who had mystical powers. I hope they prove us wrong. I hope that the APC rises to the urgency of now. And I hope that Mr. President understands that congruent with democratic processes is the freeness and the fairness of the electoral process, and congruent with democracy is the plurality of choices, and congruent with democracy is the freedom not only to participate, but to effectively criticize the ruling party and to differ and have the right to dissent. And I hope that those who are celebrating the narrowing down of our political space understands this reality, and together walk the path of patriotism and protect our country, our democracy, and the right to disagree.